tonight we have a very special guest for you, but before we introduce Mr. Karp, Ivan, I want to say that I don't know if you saw the papers today, but Hannah Wilkie died, and I just wanted to let you all know that if you didn't know it already. I shouldn't have done that at that moment, actually, but I did. Next week, I'm going to glitch around. We're going to have a panel on sculpture in a corporate context called Repair Work, and it's from an exhibition that was sponsored by OIA Gallery. And the following week, we're having our Portrathon, our annual Portrathon, and I really wanted to mention that tonight because it's an opportunity for you who are artists to draw, and you who would like to have a portrait of yourself or of a friend to get one for only $2 a minute. Barnaby is in charge of that. Okay. This evening is, I think, a special one in these times, and I'm going to let Elaine Marinoff, who is going to be our interviewer tonight, talk more about how she wants to approach that question of will the art world recover? Okay.
Actually, my original question was, will there be a resurgence of interest and recovery in the art market, and what can we do to help it happen? And I think you all know, I don't know whether you all know Mr. Karp, but Ivan Karp was one of the first people to be in New York as a dealer. He certainly was one of the first to, or the first to come down to Soho and start the biggest gallery, the most space. He was a visionary and quite an important person in the art world. Very, very trend-setting, prominent, and certainly a New York legend, known for his tenacity and for his cigar. When I first thought of doing this panel, I knew that he was the right one because he always is so enthusiastic, and he's certainly set the trend. So I'd like to start by asking you a few questions myself.
Let me start by greeting the audience to begin with, many of whom are, of course, old friends of mine, and it's confounding to me that some of you have come who know this subject extremely well. I see several of my exhibitors in the audience, and they understand the travail of the art world at this time. But it's a kind of companionship to have you here, and I'm very warmed and comforted to be in your company. The questions, of course, Elaine will proffer the questions, and of course you'll have the answers. Of course, I can't think of anybody better equipped to deal with this subject than myself. The economy of the art world, of course, is in a state of severe stress. And we'll field now the first question that Elaine has as best we can.
Before we start asking the questions, I'd like to quote a highly esteemed art critic, who's new on the market these days, Robert Morgan. He said in our a lecture that he gave not too long ago that the art market is not going to die because artists feel so deeply about their commitment and work that galleries can't possibly disappear. He feels that the art market will only become stronger. I'd like you to comment on that.
Well, he's absolutely wrong about that. He has no knowledge or concept of how art functions in the art market. The artist's profession and those who represent the artists are involved in a treacherous, very treacherous profession. Making of art is a curious and exotic activity, and the selling of art is fraught with peril for the attempt to sell it. When we consider the conditions requisite for the successful conclusion of a negotiation in the selling of a work of art, we realize the number of obstacles that confront us. First thing would be, in order to identify a client, would be to find somebody interested in the kinds of things that you were exhibiting. In other words, the client would have to be somebody interested in the visual arts. That person would have to turn up at your premises at a particular time and place. He or she would have to be responsive to the kinds of things you were showing. They would have to allow for the possibility that what they admired, they would have a place to exhibit. They would have to have the wherewithal to pay for the object. And most troublesome and difficult, they would have to have a consenting spouse. This is we find to be probably the largest obstacle to the conclusion of a transaction in the selling of works of art. Also, again, another obstacle is the fact that objects made by hand, which are works of art, and the only things in the modern world that remain, that are made by a person, by their hand, are works of art, are curiously expensive, and rightfully so. We begin our exhibitions with a new artist for a work of moderate scale, 3 or 4 by 5 feet, at somewhere between $3,500 and $5,000. This is an average starting price by some kind of mutual consent of professional art dealers. Mature art dealers will agree that there is a certain starting price for a work of art of a certain size, and it somewhere ranges between $3,000 and $5,000. How many of the general public have the wherewithal to put forth $5,000 for an object that they admire at any time? It's a very small fraction of the population we're speaking of. When I first went into the gallery business in 1956, we counted 8 people in the United States who would buy contemporary art on a regular basis. 8 people who bought art on a regular basis. Now I'm not talking about a person who occasionally will acquire an object to put over the couch or to ornament a particular part of their environment. Talking about people whose passion and conviction and obsession is to acquire works of art. There were 8 people in 1956. When I went to the Castelli Gallery in 1950-1960, there were 9 people. The audience had not increased. These 9 people we saw on a regular basis at every opening in the art world. In 1956, 1959, during the heyday of abstract expressionism, there were 334 people present at the opening. Openings were traditionally, and there are some people maybe in the audience who remember those days. Certainly, Nasos Daphnis remembers the days. He'll forgive me for identifying him as a person from my own generation. He remembers the 1950s when the openings were on a Tuesday night by the consent of the 6 or 8 avant-garde galleries. They would all, by consent, open on the same night, on a Tuesday night. And of course, the same audience, the same 334 people would turn up at all of these openings. And of course, the posture at that time is unlike it is now. Everybody was in a state of profound alienation. Anxiety, stress, and alienation. That was the correct posture. If you didn't look in a state of tragic demise and grievance, then you really didn't qualify as a member of the art world. If you showed good cheer, it was considered utterly bizarre conduct. One had to believe in the days of abstract expressionism that what the artists were involved in and the audience for art was a small alien part of the population, and it was true. It was a small portion of the population. But there was a certain nourishment in this alienation. The person who could show more anxiety and stress was the most heroic. The person at that time who showed the most stress was Jackson Pollock himself. Nobody caused more disruption or was more unpleasant at an opening than Jackson Pollock. But there were others who emulated him. Right? He had a large disciplage of young art students and artists who also projected forth this degree of total anxiety and stress. In any event, that's what it was. They were the 8 collectors. They would turn up if they lived in New York or they were there for that moment. 8 collectors, 7 dealers, 14 luminaries, and 264 disciples. Hope that comes out right. That's exactly what the art world was composed of in 1956 when I pretty much entered it. It grew by leaps and bounds by 1960 where there were 540 people in the art world, right? But the openings changed a little bit. Somebody decided to open on Thursday. This was very disruptive. And so the art world shifted. I'm trying to describe to you here now that even with the growth of the art world, there never were that many people, and I don't want to cause you people any more anxiety. I don't want the openings that we have these days to be fraught with the kind of alienation and anxiety that we experienced in the 1950s. Of course, the art world has become part of the American climate, very much so. And the art world has grown quite dramatically. However, we count in my gallery, which is an active, lively gallery at its best, between 25 and 30 regular collectors that we have. And that's considered a very large number. Right? Most galleries have 4 or 5 loyalists, and I'm not talking, again, about the occasional buyer of a work of art who may come in to buy a work for a particular location or a particular position, or a corporate collection that buys an occasional work for a particular reason. We're talking about people whose mental life encompasses the instinct to accumulate significant objects in their life, regular collectors. In the entire country, we count about 75 people like this. In the entire country. If you were to crowd fragile likes of Leo Castelli into a corner, or the pompous grace of Andre Emmerich, and get them into a corner and say, how many collectors do you actually have? How many people acquire work from you that you can count on a more or less regular basis, who come in and admire things and they take them away on a regular basis? Each of them would say 5 or 6. 5 or 6. And I'm claiming 25 to 30. That's a very large collecting public. Right? So taking all in all, I'm saying there are about 75, let's allow for 100 collectors of contemporary art in the entire country, of people who buy significant contemporary art on a regular basis. Now there are several thousand who buy work occasionally, right? And of course they, in some ways, sustain the economy of the art world. However, they are not presently visible. This is probably, in my memory, and I've been doing this for 37 years, the darkest moment that I can remember in my entire career as an art dealer. This is the darkest interval. It started about 24 months ago, after a very hot 3-year period that we're all acquainted with, the period of great hysteria in collecting. It has collapsed so dramatically that I can describe that my activity is down between 80 and 85% from what it had been. Right? So even a gallery like mine, and we do 4 or 5 shows a month. We have a large, wonderful, almost museum-like environment. We show a rich, complex variety of professional work in my facility. We have a very large audience, which we've not lost. We have between 1,500 and 3,000 visitors a week, which is lovely. And it's very comforting to us to have a large audience come in. But we put on a good show, and there's always something to look at there, you know. Our business is down 85%, and we're just barely above the swirling waters at this point. The number of galleries that have gone out in the last 18 months is something like 45 galleries. Curiously enough, I read today that other galleries are coming into the scene. An astonishing fantasy. I haven't heard of it. It's unbelievable. I imagine that people coming into my premises or any gallery on a Saturday afternoon and watching what seems to be activity would be fascinated by the robust spirit of the art world. It looks like there's commercial activity, but there is absolutely none. I have 5 exhibits. We do 5 shows a month in my gallery, all works of very professional quality over the years. We have not sold one work from our 5 shows in the last 2 shows. Not one object. And we have people coming in. The attendance is normal, perfectly normal. Even the people who we count on to make some kind of commitment or involvement in some of the objects there are there, and they smile, and they're charming and pleasant and agreeable, and they're not involved. And this is across the board. Dealers have come down to see me. Usually dealers don't visit each other's gallery. I'm one of the few I know who goes around to various galleries. I've seen dealers I haven't seen in years. And I say, Harry, what are you doing here? He said, nothing doing uptown, right? Alan Stone, who hadn't been downtown in 4 years, came down to see me. I said, Alan, what are you doing here? He said, no reason to sit there day in and day out. Came to see how you're suffering. So, in any event, this is across the board. So it comforts me in a very negative way not to be the only one who's in a state of severe shock at this point. And I don't want you to leave here in a state of profound depression from what I'm telling you, but it seems sensible to tell the truth and to mislead you into believing that the art world is in a perky condition. It's not. And there is no evidence at this juncture that the art world has revived in its economy. There's no evidence of it. Little things may happen here and there, like an occasional sale. But there is no rhythm of economic development in our community. We are, after all, and you must face this, all of you who are involved in this treacherous profession, in the luxury trade. We are in the luxury trade. Our objects start in $3,000 and $4,000 and $5,000. That is very expensive. People will buy, when they're feeling good about themselves, they will buy jewelry or furs or property before they will buy art. The last thing that a prosperous, cheerful, optimistic person will buy is fine art. It is the last thing they come to. You have to feel expansive about your prosperity. You have to feel confident about the future. You have to feel in good health, and you have to have a consenting spouse. All of those things feed into the possibility of acquiring works of art. And there is no climate for that right now. Of course, lots of us feel that with the new presidency, a new economic policy may be ordained, and that maybe with the coming of spring, there may be a refreshment of the economy. That's possible. Even with a 10 or 20% refreshment, we will be above the swirling waters. But at this time, there's great treachery here. Did you have another question for me?
Well, talking about customers, it's my theory that the young people today do not have enough education in art appreciation. And if they did, they would be buying when they got to be, out of college, when they start setting up their homes. Do you feel that that's true?
I don't think really education has very much to do with it. The curious condition known as perceptual ability is such a rare condition that it really has very little to do with education. And this is something that I've observed in my entire career as an art dealer, that only a small portion of my lovely visiting public knows what it's looking at. We count 10 or 15% of our visitors as knowing what in God's name they're looking at. The other people may enjoy what they come and see. They may enjoy the environment of an art gallery. They may feel like it's going to church to experience art. A lot of people go to the museums, as you know. You see them flooding in to see Matisse, a minor master, by the thousands, going in to see him as if it was a religious experience. They go there instead of going to church. A lot of people do that, and they feel like their spirit is refreshed by going, but they really haven't the foggiest notion what they're looking at. A small portion of the visiting public for art has a notion of what it's looking at. So perceptual ability has nothing to do with education. It has to do with some kind of chemical and psychological condition which makes for that degree of visual comprehension of what we call objects of art. In any event, we count on, in my enterprise and more art galleries, that the children, the offspring of the established collectors will also continue the tradition of family collecting. And that does happen occasionally. We see some of it. Some, of course, that diverge away from the family. There are offspring who are not interested in what their family was concerned with. And you can't count on this curious condition I'm describing as perceptual ability or the interest in arts to be an ongoing condition in a family. It's a very complex, mysterious process why certain people have responsiveness to visual experience and others don't. And those people who do have a responsiveness are not always charming, elegant, intelligent people. Some of the coarsest, grossest, most vulgar people are some of my collectors, right? And I honor them for their interest in the arts, and we treat them with great respect, but they are not nice people. Some of the most charming, elegant, educated people have not the foggiest notion what art is about, not the faintest idea what an object of art is. So there's no formula there. There's no equation to understand why some people are responsive and others are not. I leave that to be, for me, one of the great mysteries of my life is to understand, where does visual perception find itself? In whom does it find itself? It doesn't even find itself necessarily in artists. I see more artist studios than any living person. I see between 50 and 100 artist applicants a week for the last 37 years. Right? And I continue to do this not only as an act of goodwill, and there's a certain amount of goodwill involved there, and a certain what I consider to be an ethical obligation to the art world. I'm looking for a genius. I'm looking for somebody who walked in with a bandage on his ear and a red beard. That's the man I'm looking for, right? Always looking for that person, right? So we look at 50 to 75 artists a week, and as a result of my inquiries, I visit 3 to 4 studios a week. Mostly now they're in Brooklyn. Those of you who have studios in our neighborhood, in Soho and in Tribeca, you're a blessed creed of people, lucky folks, right? Because everybody now is in Greenpoint and in Williamsburg. That's where I go almost every Sunday. This Sunday, I have 3 studios in Williamsburg. Right? It's Greenpoint, Williamsburg, Park Slope, and Jersey City, and Hoboken, right? Places like that. That's where most of the studios are. And I find that, if you'll allow me to say this, that a majority of the artist environments are not especially seemly looking. It's not as if, we're not talking about poverty here. We're not talking about the necessities of life. I'm talking about seemliness, right? Poor selection of furniture, poor selection of works on the wall except for their own work, right? Most artists don't collect paintings. There's no interest in the art beyond the thing they make. This is not evil, right? It's a wonderful thing to be concerned with what you do. It's a legitimate thing, but it's awfully common. Most artists are not collectors, and a lot of them have no visual experience beyond what they do. Most of the studios I go to are not seemly looking. That is, they have no grace, no charm, no style, no unity, no harmony, nothing, just a place to work. And no criticism of that, perfectly legitimate, right? But to assign to artists as being different than people in general, it's not true. Artists are no more perceptual in many cases than the general public. And this is an amazing fact, right? The making of art has to do with obsession. It has to do with nothing else. And it's something that you have to learn to live with. You make art because you need to, and you cannot help it. It is a helpless condition, right? I've been doing this for 37 years, and for the evidence I see, 75 artists a week with 10 slides each. How many slides a week is that? Every week of my life. 750 slides a week by a small count. And besides those that come in the mail without return envelopes. How many of those am I getting, right? I receive express mail packages, $9.30, with the entire life's work of an artist in slides. 7 sheets of slides with the whole history of the artist's life, biographical material, prizes that were awarded, no return envelope. Kindly return my slides when you have viewed them, right? $9.50 times 7,000 packets of slides, that's a hell of a lot of money, you know? Anyhow, we keep them in a special locked area saying, awaiting return postage. Only 25% actually reclaim their slides. It's an amazing percentage, right? Most people don't want their slides back. Once they've been rejected, they say, what the hell, right? In any event, talking about perceptual ability and the audience in general, getting back to the collectors, they are a special breed, and we honor them. And some of them are not charming and graceful people, but we honor their interest in the arts because lip service is nothing. What the critic says, what the art historian says, what the jerky museum director says has nothing to do with commitment compared to the person who says, I will give you my resources for that object. The person who says, I will give you what I have generated in the way of income for that object. The man who buys the art. That is the most intense commitment to an artist's work. Nothing else compares to it. It's easy to write a nice sentence about your friend's work if you're an art critic, right? It's even easy to put somebody into a theme show at a museum. That's not a commitment. That's just an opinion. That's all that is. A commitment is a person who comes to you or to me and says, that's a fabulous object. I will buy that object at a much reduced price. Next question.
What do you think we should do about this?
Oh, what should we do about it? We should march on somebody. I don't know what to
No,
march.
I mean, have you,
There's nothing we can do. We are a very small insular community in this country. In New York, of course, like there are, 150, 200 galleries in Soho. It's an astonishing community, unique in this world. Nothing like that has ever happened. 200 art galleries with all these people on the street. You see people that you know every day. You walk down the street. Hey, there's somebody you know there, here, there. It's an amazing community. This area, Tribeca, Soho, the area around here. It's an amazing place, phenomenal in the world, historical event. That's so many artists and so much art activity. But have you been to Nebraska? Have you been to Idaho? Have you been to Wyoming? Have you been even to Arizona? You can go through vast tracts of wilderness and nobody gives a damn about what we do. Don't care at all, right? I mean, those are nice people. I mean, they live a good life. They're wholesome. They contribute to our welfare, into the well-being of America. But they're not interested in the visual arts, right? We're a small community. We're a tiny, infinitesimal part of society. And we must love each other and protect each other, right? Even the fact that there's enmity and politics in the art world. I'm lecturing next week. Don't come to this lecture about politics. It's really disheartening. I'm giving to another group down the street here, Power and Politics in the Art World. Well, of course, it's full of a lot of texture and scandal, but it's not wholesome, right? So you don't want to be there for that. In any event, there's no way that you can reach out and say, oh, please, America, pay attention to us. We need resources. We need help, you know? I don't even believe in the government having subsidies. They make so many blunders. When government agencies get involved in the arts, they're bound to make towering blunders. I don't want them in the art community. I don't need a National Arts Council or anything like that. art is so strange and so peculiar and so eccentric and so unusual that we should let the general public involved in it. Let them stay and have a happy life, right? For those of us who really care and whose passion is visual experience, let us nourish each other. That's what we should do. I can't think of any solution for our problem, except we count on the president to bring a new economic interval into our country, and maybe there'll be some measure of refreshment. There was, during the 1980s, starting with 1983, 84, there was a hysterical interval of buying art. There was a great false Reagan-esque prosperity, if you'll forgive my political opinion. It was a false prosperity, and those of us who were in the arts at that point in a certain place, we benefited from it. I had 3 or 4 unbelievable years, right? We made great prosperity, and that's what we're coasting on right now. If we didn't have those good years, we would not be functioning now, and that's true with most of the galleries in New York. There was a great, flourishing, prosperous interval when people of new wealth, mostly real estate money, decided that the right thing left to do in life with their money, after they had 2 houses in the country and a place in Spain and 1 in the West Indies, right, and a beautiful apartment in New York and 4 cars and all the servants they needed, that the right thing to ornament their lives with was fine art. And it was a gross group of people buying stupidly, foolishly, excessively, and they despoiled the art market. They distorted it grossly for the prices at auction and the prices of art, for poor works, for bad works. The Japanese entered at that point also. The Germans entered. It was gross, grotesque collecting. And, well, we gathered some of what they call trickle down from that. Those of us who were showing only contemporary art, not blue chip works, we gathered a trickle down. There was one interval in 1987 where we sold a painting or a sculpture every day for 48 days. It was an unbelievable interval. Every day of the week for 48 days we sold something. Miracle. We haven't sold anything in 3 weeks right now, right? This is terrifying. Of course, we got used to this idea of 48-day intervals. It was unbelievable, right? But the people who are buying it are not buying it now. They have pulled out completely from the art market. This was real estate money for the most part, people who were playing, and they were speculating. It was speculative art buying, strictly that, and they are being severely injured. And that gives me great comfort to see them suffering. Great comfort. People who paid hundreds of thousands. A man came in with little work for sale the other day, for resale, an old friend of mine, who was a painter in his own right, but on the side he saw these glowing opportunities on the horizon that he himself could become a secondary art dealer, a little private art dealer. He'd buy some of his friends' works and sell them on the market. He bought a work by a famous artist for $70,000. The work was about the size of this photograph here, 18 by 14, about 10 inches, 18 by 12 inches. Paid $70,000 for it. He's asking right now $9,000 for it. He paid $70,000 for it. This happens every day of the week. People call us with works, offering us things for sale at 1/10 of their purchase value. And people have gone into difficulty with that. A number of dealers, of course, have gotten into very great difficulty with expenditure, buying very expensive objects which they can't presently sell. So I don't want to create any more gloom. If the art market perked up 15 or 20%, we'd be all right. That's what it was during normal times. Normal times, 1965, 1968. It was an interesting active art market. It became totally bizarre and hysterical in the mid-'80s. And we don't want that necessarily back because everything was distorted. And we all know that the wrong artists got the most attention, don't we? We all know that. Anyhow, next question.
Well, you've answered so many of my questions on my list.
Can't help but be comprehensive.
Yeah, you were. Well, I think probably what we should do now is to open it up for some questions from the audience, because actually everything I have on my list you've answered.
I had brought along with me
can't.
a cushion against adversity, a colleague of mine and one of my exhibiting artists from California, who will provide for you a very brief summary of commercial art activity in California. Dan Duque, would you just say a few words to us, please, to the audience here?
The trickle down was certainly a lot less than you got in California. In the 60s and the 70s in Los Angeles, there was a lot of optimism and hope for a vital scene, and it has halved itself, collapsed. It feels as if we are on the brink of a visual ice age in Southern California. There's about 12 galleries left doing business. I could give you a litany of major galleries that have gone out of business, and we're hoping for some sense of vibrancy to occur. That's all I have to say.
I knew through 2 sentences would be complete about California. That's how it goes. We've had, of course, we have an international relationship in my gallery. Most active galleries have connective tissue around the country with other galleries where they'll have brother or sister galleries in other major cities which show their artists' work. Most of this is diminished. Our whole entire California connection is pretty much gone. It's astonishing that probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the commercial art galleries there have closed, right? Some of them have decided to open on the East Coast in the happy hunting ground. Another total fantasy, right? And we welcome them to watch their tragic demise. Right?
Are there, Ivan,
Yes, my friend.
are there any places now that are doing well selling art?
There are a couple of outposts of prosperity. A couple of one would be Palm Beach, Florida, where wealth seems to endlessly funnel in. And the
Old money.
5 or 6 galleries there, old and new money, 5 or 6 galleries there are still way above the waters. Just down the street from them, Boca Raton, also seems to be a very prosperous community. 5 galleries closed in Miami. Washington, D.C. is a total wipeout. 3/4 of the galleries, Washington, D.C. closed. One of the leading galleries recently in Chicago closed last week. One of my connective galleries there, I can't even say her name from sheer terror of the whole thing. I'll come back to me. I can't hardly say it because I'm also getting older. That's one of the reasons. Yeah, Hoken Kaufman closed in a major gallery, 10 years in operation. A friend of mine in Boston just closed also. So it's a dark moment, and maybe this is the bottom right now. I'd like to believe that. Maybe there is some tunnel at the end of the light, something like that, you know. In any event, let's have some questions, please. There's some degree of arts activity in Germany. The French scene is a disaster. In London, it's bleak beyond bleakness, much worse than here. Never was that much anyhow for contemporary art, but there were little pockets of activity there. They're gone, almost gone completely. Paris in a state of shock. Italy is very curious, mysterious economy Italy has, as you know. And I remember looking for contemporary art in Italy. It's hard to find. It's behind gauzed curtains. I remember going into a gallery in Milano. And the door first, you have to ring a button to get in. And there would be a sylph-like and charming person sitting behind a desk in the distance, reading some kind of esoteric arts journal. And there'd be nobody else. And there would be maybe a Twombly on one wall, and a drawing by Franz Klein, and something by Antonio Tapies, 4 majestic objects priced at no less than $450,000 per unit. But there was no price chart. You'd have to get into some kind of discussion with the person behind the desk who would direct you to a telephone where you would call somebody who would be in Capri, somewhere sitting on a ship or a yacht, and that person would give you the price. And then negotiation would proceed over the next several weeks. That's the nature of business in Italy. That's the way it goes. And I imagine there's still some activity there because the people in Italy who are prosperous don't pay taxes and nobody knows who they are, right? So there is some art being sold in Italy, but less so. Germany is active to a degree, but the Germans veered away mercilessly from collecting American art in the late 70s, early 80s, started to buy German art. Right, serious blunder if there ever was one. They buy this artist whose faces are all upside down. You know, this guy makes 9 pictures a week and all the faces are upside down. Beyond human comprehension. You know. But they buy it because they decided at a certain point they just can't keep supporting America. They were buying American art for 20 years, right? The Japanese had been deceived into buying the worst post-impressionist paintings ever made by the human hand. For 15 years, American dealers spilt onto the Japanese mainland 3,000 borderline post-impressionist pictures that the Japanese paid extortionate prices for, right? They have the foggiest notion, like a lot of people, what they're doing. They have no notion about contemporary art. They buy recklessly. Their biggest buying was, beyond you, I hate to confess this, that I actually, during the heyday, 1986, 87, when things were jumping, I actually, this is really a very painful confession. I participated in the sale of 2 works by Bernard Buffet. I mean, this is a shocking confession. Those works never actually entered my premises, but during that heyday, during that interval, you could sell works by Polaroid, right? And so people, there's a wonderful story that goes with this. We have a few minutes. One of my a handful of 35 or 30 collectors came into me, and she said to me, you know, Ivan, she said, I have a couple of things that we acquired when her husband had just, he didn't decease, he died, this man. He was not a winning personality. And she seemed to be senselessly cheerful when he died. And she said to me, there were some things that we had acquired when we were first married. And I remember she said, Ivan, I wondered how I can dispose of these things. And I said, what is it you have? She said, well, I don't know. I wrote down here the man's name, but we got it in Paris in 1949 when I was married. And everybody said he was the leading artist of the day. And his name was Bernard Buffett, right? So I said, oh, you mean Bernard Buffet, don't you? She said, well, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's been under the bed for 30 years, right? So I said, would you get me a picture of that? She said, well, I don't really have a picture. I don't know what to do with this. I said, just give me a picture. I said, how much did you pay for it? Oh, we paid $5,000 for it, 1949. We sold the picture for $280,000. $280,000. Of course, I only made $2,000 on it, but that's what we sold it for. In any event, it was sold by Polaroid. It never entered my premises. So don't feel discomforted to walk in that the air in my place has been sullied by this tragic intrusion, right? But that's the kind of thing that was happening back in the 80s. Things like that were being sold, right? I don't remember the question anymore.
Can I, Bill, please, if you guys have a question, raise your hand.
Oh, yes,
so I can
please, you
get
must,
the
because
mic
this is
to
being
you.
recorded.
Come.
But from the 60s to the 80s, there was a great increased number of galleries. So even today, a couple of months ago, I went to the Sotheby's Contemporary Auction, and there were things selling for millions of dollars. I mean, this is high-end stuff. Is that real? And is this, as a second part to the question, is the pruning process that's taken place, despite the fact that there are lots of new galleries opening, is that a healthy thing now? Because there was a lot of discussion about that there had, in fact, the number of galleries had grown to a point where maybe there were too many galleries, and this is a pruning process. This is actually kind of a healthy thing, and there must be a lot of galleries selling work for all the galleries to still be open, that are still open.
I don't really understand the mechanism. I walk around as much or more than almost any person involved in gallery activity, and I go up to the 5th floor on certain buildings where it seems nobody has turned up for 3 weeks, and I see exhibitions of works of such shallowness, such vacuity, such unprofessionalism, that I imagine that they must be selling a controlled substance in the back room to save business. And how do they do it, in God's name, right? These are places like in Antarctica. I go to places where there's somebody reading a fashion magazine in a back room who hasn't seen a client in 7 years. I don't know what they're doing there. There's got to be some mysterious economy that supports these places, right? Now, it's possible that the landlord is not being paid, and I heard that to be true about a certain building where the landlord had received rent for 4 or 5 months. Now, I don't know. There are prosperous people who put their children or relatives into this business because it's considered a very elegant way to live, and it does have its charms, right? As soon as you sit behind a desk in an art gallery, you become an arts dictator. People come all of a sudden to you and they give you respect whether you're worthy of it or not. And you don't have to take a civil service exam. Anybody can be an art dealer. 4 clean walls, a powerful desk, and a plant, and you're an art dealer, right? It's helpful if you have it's nice if you have a slide viewer. But I remember one day when artists used to come to me, as they still do, and I say to them, did you go anywhere else with your slides? They said, not really. I said, why didn't you go to anywhere else? They said, oh, they don't treat you with any courtesy. I said, what do you mean, that you try to show your slides and nobody looks at them? And they say, we're not going to look at slides for 7 years. Right? Well, this is familiar, right? We know that. And I understand why a lot of dealers don't like the confrontational situation. I do that because, as you can see, I am built for confrontation. I was meant for that, and I can reject artists with a certain amount of cheerfulness and grace. In fact, I remember I can reject artists so that they don't know they've been rejected until they get back to Cincinnati. I mean, I have enough subtlety, a lot of practice in doing that, and I can do it, and I think it's the right thing for a dealer who essentially is concerned with the works of living artists, is more or less obliged to look at the work of living artists, but not everybody's cut out for that. So some dealers hide behind their desk in the back room, and they have some charming underling who said, I think of the guy over there, Mary Boom Gallery, who sits up front there in that ornamental desk. I mean, that's one of the most terrifying people I've ever come across. I wouldn't even know how to show him slides, right? I mean, that guy's really scary, right? You go around some of these galleries where the person who's been assigned the task of rejecting people has so much hauteur and arrogance. I mean, it's really scary. So one day I ran around with a box of slides, and I was going to try out dealers, right? I figure, you know, I look like a tragic older artist, right? I wouldn't shave for 2 days, and I put on my really battered beads, you know, and a shirt with a little bit of gravy stains on it, right? And I go around and look like Modigliani if I could, right? And say, would you look at my slides? And I really tested the case and said, we're not looking at slides till 1994, right? I said, well, why is that? He said, we don't need anybody, right? Or we look at slides only on Thursdays, right, in the summertime. Only on Thursdays in the summertime. I said, well, aren't you closed? He said, yes, we're closed on Thursdays in the summertime. Anyhow, a lot of you know this kind of stuff, the syndrome, right? There are a few nice people out there, and of course, a lot of dealers who don't want to go through the process of rejecting people, because it is, after a while, it becomes a bit of a travail. You hear yourself rejecting people after a while, and you sympathize or you empathize with the person being rejected. I said, how can I be so tormenting? So you assign it to somebody else to do. Well, I don't do that, but a lot of dealers feel that you leave your slides and we'll look at them, and we know that maybe half the galleries actually look at the slides and send you back a pleasant form letter. The others shred your slides. Right. They send them to the great archives in the sky of unsolicited slides, you know. In any event, what was the question? No, the fact that there are many galleries, there's no competition in the commercial part of the arts because everybody does their own thing. And I can't think of another gallery that depletes my opportunities to sell work because we have our own personality and our own stamp. There weren't too many galleries, and the fact is that it was an awful lot a confounding number of galleries for a general audience to try to sort out the meaning of. So it's nice to have that pared down to a degree so that the scene becomes more articulate. You can really identify the places that you want to go to. In that sense, maybe it's healthier, you know. I don't know if it's healthier for the economy, but it's the only thing that's going to survive here. I anticipate another 30, 40 galleries going out within the next 6 months. It's got to be that way.
Just the fact that these galleries exist, still, just the fact that
They're surviving.
hundreds of galleries are still surviving.
Yeah.
Doesn't that indicate that there is some kind of health that isn't perhaps obvious, but some kind of health is still in the scene?
Well, I poke around the galleries looking for the price chart, we're looking for red dots, and I don't see many red dots, and I don't know how these other places are making it. I know that, look, I'm a veteran, and I know how to survive, and it's 37 years for me, and I've been through the art wars, right? And we have a big place like a museum, and we show a rich variety of things there, and we have a loyal audience, and we're struggling. I don't know how the others are making it, right? It's possible their expenses are lower. The average cost for operating an art gallery in the Soho district is between $30,000 and $70,000 a month. That's average. Average is $50,000 a month. That means you have to sell at least $110,000 to $120,000 worth of art a month. That's a lot of sales. If you don't have any really prime luminaries who get big prices for their work, that's a lot of sales. We're talking on average price for an art object of $5,000, $7,000, $9,000, $12,000, $15,000. An artist is getting $15,000 for his or her work after the third or fourth show, if they're lucky. Most galleries are selling in the $3,000 to $5,000 class. $120,000 a month in sales to sustain $50,000 in expenses. It's incredibly lot of money. So a lot of this has to be family support, or backers, or the not paying of rent, or the delaying of paying the bills. There's a lot of that, and we know that to be the case. A lot of people putting it off, and a lot of course, those who are carrying these charges are putting them off. Fine arts truckers, framers, stretcher makers are all delaying their request for payments because the whole art world is in a state of turmoil. Right? We see that to be the case. Otherwise, for me, from my observations, it's a mysterious survival process. Can't make it out.
Are there other adjustments that you've made, any kind of secrets that you could reveal on how you're
What we're obliged to
surviving?
do, because whatever audience we have at this point is very much awake to our vulnerability, right? We have to give very dramatic discounts on anything. So price of work, a work that's priced at $15,000, $18,000 is reduced 20 to 25 or even 30% to give the artist some measure of cheer. You may not reduce the artist's end of the sale, but you're going to reduce your end dramatically. You may ask the artist to reduce his end or her end 10, 15% in order to conclude some kind of sale. Because a lot of artists gained the momentum of sales back in the 80s where they were feeling optimistic and buoyant, and they were quitting their jobs teaching in small colleges to make art, and those artists are not functioning right now. There's no economy for them. So we have to try to adapt ourselves to that. My staff is my loyal family, and we haven't reduced our staff at all. We try to cut down on photography. We photograph practically every object that comes into the gallery. Have to have a record. It's almost a cultural obligation to record in photography any work you consider to be of any consequence. We have enormous archives of photography for future generations. You want to record what you do, right? Advertising, none at all. We don't advertise. We never did very much of it, now less.
Say something at this point?
Please.
Okay. Why can't some of this be reflected in what's shown as the art?
Please,
Why
I don't
can't it
understand.
somehow mirror reflect what's going on in the gallery? As far as let's see how to phrase it. Well, the interaction between the dealer, the artist, and what's going out or being shown to the public. So it's the art that's being sold. Like you want to sell something for less, it's got to reflect somehow on what you're selling as your product.
I don't understand
And
what
I
you're...
don't think that you reached that point yet.
I don't
What do you
understand
mean,
what you're saying.
little miniature pieces? What do you mean?
Well, either go for a smaller piece or for things, try out things or
Try
try
a
to
different strategy, you mean?
try and experiment with what's being shown up on the wall. Yeah, strategy. Have you, and with your experience, as you've been reflecting, is it possible with all through the years as you've reflected with what you've been showing, can you reflect upon that knowledge and somehow get, I don't know, some kind of a rubber back and forth?
There's really
kind
no,
of
what
feeling?
we do, first of all, it's important to understand, all of you who are professional artists understand that if you've had an exhibition, your price, your retail price never goes down. You cannot lower the price of a work of art for an artist who's been exhibiting. There's no such
Why?
thing. You cannot lower the retail
but
price.
that's-
All you can do is give a larger discount because it's a serious and traumatic blow to the artist and to the gallery to establish a lower price class for an artist who has finally achieved a certain price class. Those prices remain or they are raised, but your negotiations are much more dramatic, and the public knows it. They know it. All the audience knows that you're vulnerable at this point, and that you're going to give 15, 20, 25, even 30% discounts, right?
That's
We're
what
gi-
they're working with, though. Like, before you went back, I could reflect a little bit on an advertising experience, but you say you don't want to advertise. It's understandable. That's media and how we interact with the media with all of this.
It's
I
just
think
frightfully
also part of
expensive is what
we're
it amounts
talking
to.
about. You also bring about photos, too. That's, to start considering photos as artwork, that's another thing to be doing.
Considering what?
Considering photographs as artwork.
We show more photography than any gallery in New York.
And
We
he
do
was
1 or 2
also,
shows a month. We have 2 photography shows on right now, 2 masterpiece photography shows. We have one show that people have been standing in front of. What's that, please?
How are they going?
We haven't sold one. We've had 185 photography shows since we opened. We have not had one review in the New York Times. In 185 photography shows.
Can I
This is
ask if there are
politics,
any
baby.
critics here?
It's
Are
politics.
there any critics or curators in the audience?
None. Oh, here? Why, are there any critics for photography in the audience?
Here and now.
Hardly likely. Hardly likely. 185 shows without a review. And it's all professional photography. Our photography shows this month are thoroughly exemplary, first class. They sell for $650 and $850 a unit, and we're prepared to give discounts, and we haven't sold anything. Nothing. Right. We try everything. We're very bright, alert, intelligent people, and we know we have to roll with the punch. Right? You cannot suddenly say, I'm going to show sellable art. Right? You can't. You can't even know what is sellable. Right? You're going to start bringing in flower pictures by Sunday painters from Paramus, New Jersey? You can't do that, right? Besides which, you're going to alienate your audience. My audience are really lively, intelligent people. They know what they're looking like. To the degree that they know what professionalism is, at least that they know when they walk in, they're going to see a work of an artist who's reasonably mature in every case, right? So I'm going to show Sunday painters from Paramus, New Jersey. Forgive me, Paramus, right? If anybody's from there, nice community. But that kind of stuff, we had to shift our whole mental process. Physical process, start showing lightweight, decorative pictures of peonies. Not likely to happen, right? I mean, we have some works of art that appeal to a very broad audience. We have several good landscape painters. I have a couple of painters who paint posies. I mean, they're a little bit esoteric, but they are posies, right? So we have artists who work in an acceptable, broadly based style of making art, right? They're not selling, right? We're not selling hardly anything at this point, right? So these are the harsh facts of life, and I'm glad you can laugh about it, right?
Ivan?
Yes, my friend, right here.
of the few works you do sell, what are they?
At this juncture, I have two collectors left. There's one man who buys all the works of one particular artist. Everything this artist makes, he buys. Unfortunately, this artist only makes 4 pictures a year. So, he's one of those slow precisionist painters who, I don't know how they get their satisfaction, these painters, who paint 1 inch a day. You know, the precisionist realists, what you call hyper-realists, whatever you are, they paint 1 inch a day. I don't imagine what kind of joy these people get, but some of their work is astonishing, right? And this man buys all this artist's work, and he pays within 5 days. This man is a walking miracle, a saint. He's a saint, right? There's maybe 1 or 2 others like that, right? But there's not many more. And we sold an occasional picture. I think we sold a picture to a man in France. He negotiated it for 4 days. He came back 4 separate intervals. Our starting price was $12,000. We're down at $9,400 right now, and now he has to show a slide to his wife. After yesterday, when he gave us the import information about when you send works to France, the French put a duty on foreign art. The French don't believe art is made out of France. It's only made in France. So they put a kind of monstrous duty on everything that you buy in the work of art, so you have to reduce its value. You're not supposed to know this. This is secrets of the trade, right? That you reduce its value for declaration purposes. So he gives us all his information about this, and I'm saying, hey, we sold a picture for $9,400, right? I mean, it's a miracle, right? It's going to pay for lunches, right? And then he says, but I have to show my wife a slide, right? So it's not done yet, right? So there's an occasional thing that happens here and there once in a while, and we're above the water. We're just paying our expenses. My expenses are lower than some. My expenses are only $60,000 a month. I'm confessing that to you. It's a shocking number. When I think about it, it gives me the jeebies, right? Just to survive that, to be able to make that much, right? And we're still surviving partly on the momentum of the successful interval that we had a few years ago. We still have a little reserve, praise the Lord, right? Any other questions, please?
A couple of years ago, one solution was actually it's been more than a couple of years, those prints that we used to make.
Who used to make prints? I never made any prints.
You never did?
No.
Yeah, you know those kind where artists would go and they'd work directly on the plate and then they would make thousands of them.
Yes, I know, but that was a tax shelter arrangement. Yeah, 3 of those people are in prison who made those prints. Not the artist. The artist never went to prison, but the people who conceived of this project of printmaking are all been incarcerated for devious doings, right? And if you want their names, we have a list there.
Are there other things like that have happened?
No, that was the major criminal activity. And there was a lot of money distributed. A lot of artists paid their bills based on what was happening then.
Yeah, it was wonderful for
The
us.
concept was really a very devious one. Yes. You have to speak into a microphone when you ask a question.
What was the scam?
The scam was to give an artist a certain fee for producing a certain number of prints that would be signed and numbered, and that they would buy these prints for $25 to $50 a unit from the artist and effect 1 or 2 sales to a commercial gallery or to a buyer or to a museum and establish that as the retail value for which they would give away 300 to 400 prints at the new retail value. Right? So if they paid $25 for the print and for the signature, and they sold it for $500 to one person, that invoice would be significant enough for the IRS to justify putting a value of $500 on each of 5,000 prints, which they would give away to an obscure museum in Missouri as a gift for a tax shelter. Right? So you had a shelter of $500,000 for an outlay of $5,000. That was the basic thing. The scam was finally detected, you know. And they were in that place, not even that nice prison in Connecticut where you play golf and stuff like that. It's a much worse prison. Yeah.
Well, what happened to the Mr. Best or Mr. and Mrs. Best? Remember, that was kind of an astonishing deal for
That was
a
Sidney
lot
Lewis.
of artists.
Sidney Lewis and his wife, some of the more generous people that ever entered the art world, who bought a lot of fine work over the years. They were exchanging their product, which was appliances in his company, for artwork. So since, as most of us are, they've gained some years over the years, right? And they've since semi-retired.
Are there any
How
other-
come there are no other people like that?
That's what I was gonna-
No.
How
Are
come
there?
there are no? There are only
'Cause that
two-
was great.
there are only a
That
couple-
really
How come
affected-
you're saying how come there are only a few saints in civilization?
Well, that's
what you're
very
asking.
few.
These
I
were
mean,
saintly people.
You would expect a couple of those people
Well,
every generation.
I know a dentist who will exchange your dentistry for art, you know, but he has to approve your work first before he'll fill you a tooth, right? I know a man who does accounting for art. Again, also, he has to see whether you're a professional before he'll add any numbers for you.
Are there ways that dealers can work out barters for artists? Like, would you do that for some of your
If an
artists?
artist says, "Oh, gee, my tooth is killing me," I call Dr. Rappaport at once and say, "Listen, I got a terrific artist for you. Help him out. He's suffering like a dog," right? And he goes over and changes with Rappaport. What more do you want to know about that bartering business?
No, I just thought it would be something for you to talk about.
No, I don't have any trouble finding topics as far as that goes. We may have depleted this session, I hope, and I haven't left you, or we haven't left you with any kind of severe state of pathological depression.
Well,
There's more, there's
But I think
more.
that you're all sane, wonderful people, and I love being with you here. And
Do you-
that we all understand that if we help each other and support each other, and if you would buy some more of my artist's work, we'd be just in great condition here. Right?
Do you feel that we should stop making art? Really?
I know that you cannot stop. You know, how many artists by subtlety and innuendo I have said to pursue another profession who haven't, right? You can't. If you're gonna be obsessed enough to make art, then it's both a necessity, a heroic act, and a terrible burden. It's all of those things at once, right? You're gonna make art because you need to make it, and nothing is gonna stop you from doing that, right? Would you start again because they're recording this, right?
I suspect that the artist, whether he's a beginner or emerging or is at the top, is like the alcoholic.
It's a necessity.
Yes.
It's a helpless condition, and I observe that to be the case.
And the brain fools him that, or feels great.
Yeah, and
the
I've never met an
alcohol.
artist who's been deflected by economic adversity, right? Struggle through the whole thing, right? I like
Well,
to
I-
believe that maybe I'm obsessed enough to remain a dealer through this terrible adversity. Right.
I began to go down the figurative artists many years ago, and I heard you once down there, and the artists bawled you out because you showed
They didn't bawl me
realism.
out, they were downright hostile.
Huh?
They didn't bawl me out, I can't be bawled out, they were just simply hostile.
Right.
Because I
right.
didn't show very many artists who worked from the figure without photographs. This was a school of
Yeah.
fanatical group of artists who feel that if you don't paint from the figure directly, then you're not a pure soul.
Yeah,
Right,
right,
yeah.
right.
I know that school.
Well, I sort of woke up about a number of years back, and I had a variety of experiences, and I arrived at an image of an artist as a person who's terrifically visually educated, but empty-headed.
What's your question?
No, that's a comment.
I observed that, yes.
Can I ask a question? Oops, I'm almost forgetting it. Shoot. Ivan.
Any other questions from the audience tonight? Right, please.
It was a good one, too. It'll come back.
Would you release that cord there so they can get it?
I was in the figurative artist meeting where you predicted that photorealism would come on the scene, and you showed a few of the artists. Do you have any presaging thoughts of the future now?
I see a lot of artists, and I don't mind doing it. I'm not encouraging any of you to bring me slides because I really see more than I need to see. But you would think that I might detect from season to season a particular rhythm or development, and I've not seen anything in the last couple of years that would indicate a particular distinctive trend or tendency. I've not seen that. We see artists working within geometric and abstract format. I see better realist painting than I see abstract painting in the last year and a half, 2 years. I've seen better art concerned with imagery than art concerned with no imagery, but there are still viable abstractionists around. What we don't see very much of that has vitality and force is artists working in a formalist mode, that is geometric painting. And that's the only thing that we're looking for at this point. We're looking for an artist working in a very severe geometric format whose work does not resemble other artists' work. This is really very interesting to me, but I've not seen anything who doesn't look like Fritz Glarner. Everybody looks like Fritz Glarner, who works in a geometric pattern these days. In any event, that's what we're mostly looking for, but I've not seen any distinctive rhythm crop up in the last 2 years. And I see a very good body. I mean, what I see is 25% very professional. I see wonderful things, and I see good work by artists all across the country, much of which that I see is better than what I see being exhibited. And I know you all feel that way also. You go around and you say, how could they possibly show this person, and they're not showing me? Well, the fact is you're probably better than some of these people being shown. But that's the case, and it's the truth. But with what I see, 25% of what I see is on a very high professional level. I think it sorts itself out to a degree. People, Sunday painters from Paramus, New Jersey, don't often come in to see me. So we're seeing very good stuff, and it's very broad spectrum, no particular tendency that I can make out.
I just remembered what I was going to ask you. It had to do with the idea of the whole economy in America, in the world, is in a shambles, and we're all very hopeful now because of our new administration and political scene that's going on. Has the art world suffered more than other worlds, or is there a way that it can recover maybe?
I'm not an observer of the economy to that degree where I can prognosticate what's going to happen. I think the people who were fired over at Pratt & Whitney this week are suffering more than we are, as far as that goes, because we even like what we do. Even when we're struggling and suffering, there's a certain joy and grace in doing our work, my work and your work. We get a certain happiness in being a community. People who work in factories who lost their jobs, I imagine, suffer more strenuously than we do. You know. Yours is a question this time. Is that not true?
I discovered that the only people who have made out in all art history are the ones who contributed to the art history. Innovative artists were the ones that started the movements, and you get credit. It's like a newborn baby.
If an artist doesn't believe that he or she is innovative, they should not pursue what they're doing. And I've never met an artist from anywhere who doesn't believe that they bring something fresh and original to what they do. If they don't do that.
Excuse me, there's another.
Please, could I help if I needed to create a movement?
Well, there is a need to create a movement. I think people in the audience would agree with me. Possibly.
I couldn't conspiratorially assemble a group of artists.
Couldn't do it. No, I know the only message wants that.
Right, there's no way of doing that, no. Really, you show what, if you're a dealer with any degree of idealism, and most dealers that I know are, and they're really a nice breed of people. I mean, I have lots of conflicts with what people exhibit in my profession. But for the most part, after all the years that I've been in it, I don't have any real bitter feelings about the others in the art community. There are people who are opposed to my point of view, who are dealers like myself, and I really, for the most part, they're very decent people. There are a few crumbs among them, you know, and a few creeps. But for the most part, the art community is a very wholesome community of reasonably decent, honest people. And I found that to be the case, right, overall. And it's been a long veteran experience for me, and that's how I feel. I enjoy the art community immensely. It's constantly nourishing to me. And whenever so often we just detect what we think to be conspiracies, where a particular artist is being launched by a group of people, it's really very hard to put together 10 people who agree with each other in the art world. It's the hardest thing in the world. There are no more smoke-filled rooms of people who say, let's launch the work of so-and-so and get it done. It's a very difficult thing. You have success by artists of no merit through the consent of the misinformed. It's the only way it can happen.
A lot of artists that I've seen and spoke to and that I know all seem to be what I call lone rangers, including myself. Individuals acting by themselves. This activity doesn't seem to be very productive, and I've noticed it. So I was trying.
Maybe productive, but it doesn't result in anything.
That's what I meant. But it doesn't produce anything other than, you know, things on the wall that nobody buys. There's no exchange. There's no the product. The cycle isn't being completed. That you're doing something and you're not getting a return for it. So I was thinking perhaps I was doing something wrong, and I noticed that I had no alliances. I had no relationships with other people.
Would you like to meet 5,000 like yourself?
No, no. I would. I was.
They're not a club. There's nothing to worry about. They're not unified in any way.
I know that.
But if you needed some kind of companionship with Lone Rangers, I have thousands of them available to you.
No. I finished with that. I was looking, what kind of alliances would you recommend between an artist and other people who could help support him and aid him in his survival or her survival?
There's an artist here tonight who is part of a group of artists who exchange ideas. And I find their activity immensely gratifying and wholesome from my observations of it. Tino Zago. Tino, can you say a few words about your group that gets together every so often to exchange ideas? Just 2 sentences, please.
Well, in fact, Elaine is part of the group, but there's Tony DeBlasi here. It's been a couple of years, 10 years or something, that we meet as a bunch of artists, Wednesday morning breakfast group, and it functions,
It's just a loose interchange of ideas, is that what it is?
Yeah. What's to see, a new gallery.
All Lone Rangers
kind of-
without a Tonto.
Yeah, right. Huh? Well, in a fuzzy way, yeah.
But has that produced any, the furtherance of anybody's career, anybody's survival out of that, other than?
I think.
No, it does creates basically interpersonal nourishment. That's mostly
Yeah,
what it does.
yeah, and out of that, hopefully,
That's not what I meant.
No, it doesn't bring practical results, does it?
Oh, here.
Yeah, that came out of it. Well, one of the people there opened a gallery up in, what is it? What's the name of the town?
Oh, Katona.
Katona. And
Vincent
started putting on
Baldessari.
shows.
One of your group opened a
Yeah.
gallery.
Wonderful little gallery.
That happened, and one of the other things that happens is that it's a place where we communicate with one another in terms of what's the shows that have been going on. Most of them are bad, but also galleries that are opening up that might be looking for some artists. So every week, some of the people make the rounds.
There's also groups like the Women's Caucus. Out of that came a women's painters group that I'm also a member of, and Cynthia McAllister here, and Nancy Zara. I mean, there are wonderful groups of artists that do get together.
Once again, they do not lead to practical results.
No,
They don't.
they-
The only way for the practical results is you and your friends open a gallery. It's the only way it's going to happen.
Frank Stella, when he started painting, if I'm not mistaken, hooked himself up with a collector and a woman named Barbara Rose, who wrote about him, and people were collecting from him. Like, essentially what I'm saying is he put together a package that was able to further him.
He didn't really. I was there from the beginning, and it
That's why I
wasn't
said
really.
that.
It wasn't really that grand a strategy, right? Things happened for him to begin with. He was a very sullen, very difficult person, who was subject to alienating a larger portion of the
Still
public.
is.
Right? And his first works, his black paintings, did not have a very broad audience. 2 people bought them all, right, for $350 a piece. So he did not have a conspiratorial instinct, but he was a very bright man. And good things happened for him, let's put it that way. But he also produced good work, and that was very helpful to the development of his career. Right? But we do know artists who don't produce good work whose careers advance also dramatically. Right? If you're charming and graceful and elegant and good-looking, and you make dinner parties, and you go to all the openings, and you attend all the major events, you will make more progress than if you don't. Right. There is no question about that.
Okay.
The artists who make the most progress the most quickly are those who reach out into the community the most vividly.
Right.
Right?
So
And
if
they
I-
give of themselves, so they're always noticed in every social event. Right?
So if I got an agent and got a publicist and started
No, there
putting
are no
this-
agents in the art world.
Well, whatever, somebody who would fill that role, somebody who would call corporations, somebody who would go around and do all that stuff. Is that the type of thing that artists aren't doing to become successful? Because I don't see it any differently
Most of the
than
artists who've
selling-
achieved significant momentum in their careers have done it themselves. So they are willing in their personality structure to reach out into the community in the way that I'm describing. These are people of aggressive spirit who don't mind being out there and sacrificing aspects of their character and personality to reach out, to be
Right.
always visible, right? To be seen at all times, to play some kind of role of interchange. It can be very debilitating to do that. But those artists seem to make more progress than the artist who hangs around in the studio all day long just doing his work. No question about that. To make it simply on merit is a rare condition, a rare condition. Right. Any other questions? I think we may have depleted this subject, right? Those of you who have secret questions that you do not want to announce to the multitude, I will field them in the back of the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. God, we could sit around here and be an artist club if we wanted, you know? Except the tea's gone, I guess. I saw there are no more pretzels. So what's the local bar tonight, Elaine? Should we go to 211? Where you
Hey,
can have
211.
one drink?
Thank you all for coming. I know it's a difficult subject. I had hoped he would say better things. You know, I know he poo-pooed my thought, but I do feel that education is really important. And I'm proposing a bill before Congress that our new administration allocate increased funding to education in the arts, in art appreciation, art history, for the young students. So that's my donation, and you'll probably get something to sign as you come to these meetings in the next few months, because I'm going to do that. I think that'll help.